When a young country artist finally decided to speak after weeks of being torn apart online, the silence broke like a thunderclap across Nashville. The name Maggie Baugh had been floating through gossip headlines for days, attached, twisted, and magnified until it barely resembled a person anymore. They called her the mystery girl, the hidden spark that supposedly came between Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman, whose picture-perfect marriage had quietly dissolved in the background. For the internet, it wasn't just a rumor, it was a feeding frenzy. Yet behind every trending topic lives a heartbeat. And Maggie's was breaking. She had never planned to be part of anyone's tragedy. In her own words, softly spoken but edged with exhaustion, she insisted she hadn't chased the spotlight. It had found her. "I never wanted to hurt anybody," she said, her voice trembling just enough to make it believable. But belief these days doesn't come easy. Once the world decides you're guilty, innocence becomes a losing game. People wanted a villain, and Maggie Baugh fit the part too perfectly. Young, talented, magnetic. The kind of energy that sparks attention before it sparks trouble. All it took was a performance with Keith Urban, one harmless duet beneath the stage lights, for imaginations to ignite. Screenshots of messages, rehearsal photos, fragments of laughter caught on camera, each became a new proof in the court of public opinion. Comment sections burned with theories. Fans accused, defenders pleaded, tabloids painted stories in ink so dark it drowned the truth. What no one saw was the quiet aftermath, the missed calls, the sleepless nights, the shock of waking up to your own name trending for the wrong reasons. Maggie wasn't angry. She was hollowed out. She had idolized Keith Urban, respected Nicole Kidman, and somehow ended up being the symbol of everything people love to hate. In her private moments, she told friends that it was Keith who first reached out, asking to collaborate, to create something special. Maybe he meant only the music. Maybe it became something more complicated than either of them understood. Meanwhile, the world had turned its gaze toward Keith Urban himself. For nearly 2 decades, he and Nicole Kidman had been the embodiment of lasting love in a business built on breakups. Every red carpet photo, every award show kiss had become a testament that some Hollywood dreams really could survive. But behind that shimmered a truth only insiders whispered. Things hadn't been right for a long time. According to quiet reports from those close to the couple, papers had already been drawn weeks before the first gossip post ever appeared. There was a parenting agreement signed discreetly, suggesting this wasn't chaos, it was a controlled collapse. Still, when news of their separation hit the internet, it felt like a thunderstorm no one saw coming. One week, Nicole Kidman was posting anniversary tributes. The next, Keith Urban was singing love songs that suddenly sounded like farewells. People wanted a reason, and Maggie Baugh became the easiest one. Because it's simpler to blame a face than to face the complexity of time, distance, and quiet unhappiness. But if you looked closer, the signs had been there long before Maggie ever walked on stage. Friends whispered about missed dinners, long absences, emotional silences. Nicole craved routine, family, something solid. Keith, forever the restless musician, craved freedom. Their hearts beat to different rhythms, and the tempo eventually tore the melody apart. Then came that infamous night, the one that every gossip page replayed in slow motion. The stage glowed gold, the crowd screamed, and there he was, Keith Urban, smiling in a way that looked almost young again, standing beside Maggie Baugh. They sang with perfect harmony, eyes meeting in the rhythm of the song. To the audience, it was chemistry. To the tabloids, it was evidence. And to Nicole Kidman, perhaps watching from afar, it was confirmation of everything she already feared. Clips flooded TikTok before the concert even ended. Fans dissected each glance, each grin, each note that lingered too long. "Look at the way he looks at her," one comment said. "That's not performance, that's confession." Within hours, hashtags linking their names climbed to the top of social media. A single lyric, changed mid-song, became a spark that set the internet ablaze. Instead of, "When they're trying to get to you," "Baby," Keith had sung. "When they're trying to get to you," Maggie. It was small, maybe accidental, but in the world of fame, accidents are rare. The next morning, Nicole Kidman was silent. Her silence spoke louder than any denial could. She didn't post, didn't comment, didn't fight back. Because when you've lived through heartbreak under flashbulbs before, you learn that defending yourself only feeds the fire. Insiders said she retreated to Nashville with her daughters, surrounding herself with family, leaning into the quiet. But quiet doesn't erase memory. It amplifies it. For Maggie Baugh, the story became unlivable. Every headline carried her name like a scarlet letter. Homewrecker. Country's new temptress. The duet that ended a marriage. It didn't matter that none of it had been proven. Online proof was irrelevant. Emotion was enough. And in the middle of it all, Keith Urban stayed mostly silent, appearing at shows, smiling for cameras, pretending nothing was burning behind the scenes. What people rarely understood was how heavy fame feels when the lights go out. Keith had spent years fighting demons, addiction, guilt, the crushing expectations that come with redemption. Nicole had already lived through betrayal once, long before him, and thought she'd outrun that ghost. And Maggie, young and still climbing, found herself standing where those two worlds collided, between nostalgia and desire, between legend and scandal. If you strip away the rumors, what remains is painfully human. Three people caught in a tangle of love, loyalty and loneliness, each trying to protect something they've already lost. Maggie Baugh didn't destroy a marriage, but she did become its mirror, reflecting what had already cracked long ago. Keith Urban didn't confess through a lyric, but maybe deep down he was tired of pretending that everything was fine. And Nicole Kidman, dignified as ever, understood what the world would never grasp: that sometimes endings don't arrive with betrayal. They arrive with exhaustion, yet as the headlines roared, another truth hid beneath the noise. All three were hurting. Fame had made their lives larger than life, but also impossibly fragile. And when fragility meets gossip, the explosion is inevitable. The storm didn't end when the news cycle moved on. It only changed form. The headlines cooled, but whispers kept circulating in green rooms, on podcasts, and in quiet Nashville studios where everyone knows everyone's business. Keith Urban carried on touring, his voice steady, his smile unshaken, but there was something different behind his eyes. A stillness, maybe even regret. People who had worked with him for years said he seemed present but distant, as if part of him had decided not to come back from wherever he'd gone inside. Meanwhile, Nicole Kidman was rebuilding quietly, not through interviews or confessions, but through composure. Friends said she started every morning with coffee on the porch, the same way she had when life was good, refusing to let chaos rewrite her rituals. There were no angry statements, no dramatic outbursts, just silence, deliberate, graceful silence. The kind that speaks of dignity and pain at once. Those close to her revealed she had been preparing for this end long before the public caught on. Papers had been signed discreetly. Plans had been laid out with care. It wasn't vengeance. It was acceptance. Maggie Baugh, on the other hand, was left to fight shadows. Every interview request, every backstage photo became a landmine. Some accused her of playing the victim. Others begged her to tell her truth. But how do you tell a truth the world has already rewritten for you? She tried to keep working, releasing new music, performing in small venues, yet no matter what she sang, the audience only heard one story. Every lyric was treated as a clue. Every tear looked like an admission. In one rare interview, Maggie finally spoke again, softer this time. She said she'd learned how quickly admiration can turn into accusation. People saw what they wanted to see, she murmured. I can't control that. Her eyes glistened, not with guilt, but fatigue. She didn't name Keith Urban or Nicole Kidman, but everyone knew who she meant. I respected them both, she added, and for a second her voice cracked, just enough to sound real. Behind her, the machine of speculation kept running. Commentators, gossip shows, and faceless internet users picked apart every word, debating whether her statement was honest or rehearsed. Some said she looked heartbroken. Others said she looked coached. The truth was simpler. She looked human. And in the era of instant outrage, being human is the one thing people won't forgive. Being human is the one thing people won't forgive. Those close to Keith Urban say he hated watching the backlash unfold. Privately, he'd told friends that Maggie didn't deserve the hate, that she was just caught in the wrong storm. Yet he never said that publicly. Silence once again became his choice. And that silence left room for everyone else to decide what the story meant. And then there was Nicole Kidman, moving forward like someone who had practiced the art of starting over. Those who'd seen her through the Tom Cruise years said this heartbreak was different. She wasn't shattered, just bruised, the kind of wound that hurts quietly under the skin. She told one confidant, "I've already learned what pain does. This time, I'll let it teach me something new." Her strength didn't come from fighting. It came from knowing when to stop. By late summer, Keith Urban appeared at a charity event in Los Angeles, smiling, playing guitar, thanking fans for unconditional love. He never addressed the scandal, but the lyrics of his new song told what he wouldn't say aloud. "I lost something that loved me back," he sang, voice breaking on the last note. To some, it sounded like confession. To others, it was just art doing what art does, translating heartbreak into melody. Meanwhile, Maggie Baugh began writing too. Insiders whispered she'd poured everything into a new album. Not revenge songs, not denials, but stories of innocence lost. Her music shifted tone. Less glitter, more grit. In one unreleased track, she reportedly sings, "They turned my kindness into crime." The lyric hit fans hard. Because whether they believed her or not, they could feel her pain. As for Nicole Kidman, she had something rarer than closure: clarity. She no longer needed to prove anything. Her silence became her power. She was seen walking through airport terminals in simple clothes, sunglasses on, no entourage. Just peace. Her fans flooded social media with messages calling her the definition of grace. For the first time, the world seemed to agree. Heartbreak didn't destroy her. It refined her. Through all of it, one question remained unanswered. What really happened behind the scenes? Was there a moment, a line crossed, a confession whispered in the dark? Or was it all coincidence, a perfect storm of timing and perception? The truth may never surface, and maybe it doesn't need to. Because sometimes the mystery itself becomes the story. If you strip away the glamour and gossip, what remains is something profoundly ordinary. 3 people learning that love, when stretched between fame and expectation, often breaks in silence before it ever breaks in public. Keith Urban lost the woman who steadied him. Nicole Kidman lost the man she thought had finally understood her. And Maggie Baugh lost the peace of being seen as anything but the rumor she never asked for. In the end, none of them were villains. They were just human beings trying to survive under lights too bright to hide beneath. The cameras, the microphones, the fans, they all magnify love until it becomes unrecognizable. What began as music turned into mythology, and no one inside it could escape untouched. Today, Keith Urban still plays his guitar. Nicole Kidman still smiles for cameras, though her eyes seem quieter now. Maggie Baugh still sings, her voice carrying a weight that wasn't there before. Maybe that's what happens when life writes a song you didn't ask to perform. You keep singing anyway, hoping someday the world stops listening to the scandal and starts hearing the soul. Because in the end, the truth isn't always in the headlines. Sometimes it's in the silence between the notes, the pauses between the words, and the ache that never makes it to the stage.